I used to believe that success meant being invisible, that if I could just blend into the background, work harder than everyone else, and never ask for anything, somehow the universe would notice and reward me. I was wrong about everything. My name is David, and at 43 years old I thought I had life figured out. I was the guy everyone could count on, the reliable one, the one who said yes to every request, who stayed late at the office while others went home to their families. I told myself I was being noble, selfless, a good man, but the truth was much darker than that. I was hiding behind a mask of helpfulness because I was terrified that if people saw the real me, the one with needs, desires, and dreams of his own, they'd realize I wasn't worth their time. What I'm about to share with you changed everything I thought I knew about worthiness, about manifestation, and about what it really means to create the life you want. It's about how I learned that you can't attract what you don't believe you deserve, and how a single moment of brutal honesty with myself opened doors I didn't even know existed. It was a Thursday morning in downtown Chicago when my world cracked open. I remember because I was wearing my lucky blue tie, the one I'd worn to every important meeting for the past 5 years, like some kind of corporate talisman. I was sitting in the conference room of the marketing firm where I'd worked for 12 years, watching my boss announce the promotion I'd been promised 6 months earlier. "We're excited to announce that Jessica will be taking over as creative director," he said, his voice echoing off the glass walls that suddenly felt like a fishbowl. Jessica, 28 years old, brilliant, confident, everything I wasn't. She deserved it, I told myself, even as something inside my chest began to crumble. She spoke up in meetings. She shared her ideas boldly. She took up space in the world in a way I'd never allowed myself to do. I sat there, nodding and clapping with everyone else, my face arranged in what I hoped looked like genuine happiness. But inside, I felt like I was disappearing, like I was becoming more transparent with each polite smile, each congratulatory handshake. After the meeting, I locked myself in the bathroom and stared at my reflection in the harsh fluorescent light. The man looking back at me was a stranger, grey at the temples, shoulders permanently hunched from years of trying to make himself smaller, eyes that had forgotten how to hold their own gaze. "Who are you?" I whispered to my reflection, but the man in the mirror had no answer. That night I sat in my empty apartment, a sterile one-bedroom in Lincoln Park that looked like a hotel room because I'd never bothered to make it feel like home. I ordered Chinese takeout, the same order I'd been getting every Thursday for 3 years, and ate it while watching Netflix shows I didn't really care about. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister Sarah in Portland. "How did the promotion announcement go? I'm so proud of you." I stared at that message for 20 minutes, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. How could I tell her that I hadn't even been considered, that I'd been so invisible in my own life that my boss probably forgot I existed, that at 43 I felt like I was still waiting for my real life to begin? I typed back, "Still waiting to hear. Thanks for believing in me." Another lie, another way of avoiding the truth that was becoming impossible to ignore. I didn't believe in myself, so why should anyone else? The next few weeks passed in a blur of forced normalcy. I showed up, did my work, smiled at the right moments, and slowly felt myself fading away. Jessica was doing an amazing job, bringing fresh energy to projects, inspiring the team, making the kind of bold, creative choices I'd always been too afraid to suggest. But it was a conversation I overheard that finally shattered my carefully constructed denial. I was working late again, not because I had to, but because going home meant facing the silence of my own thoughts. The office was mostly empty when I heard voices from the break room. Jessica and Marcus from accounting were making coffee, their conversation drifting down the hallway. "I feel bad for David," Jessica was saying, her voice gentle but clear. "He's so talented, but it's like he doesn't want anyone to notice. He makes himself so small." "Yeah," Marcus replied. "It's weird, like he's afraid of his own shadow. I've tried to include him in conversations, but he just disappears." I stood frozen in my cubicle, their words hitting me like physical blows. They weren't being cruel, they were being honest. And their honesty revealed a truth I'd been running from my entire adult life. I was afraid of my own shadow. I was afraid of being seen, of taking up space, of believing I deserved good things. I'd spent so many years making myself invisible that I'd forgotten I even existed. That night, I did something I hadn't done since I was a child. I cried. Not the quiet, controlled tears of disappointment, but deep, body-shaking sobs that came from a place I'd locked away decades ago. I cried for the dreams I'd never pursued, the chances I'd never taken, the man I'd never allowed myself to become. And in that moment of complete breakdown, something shifted. A voice inside me, quiet but clear, whispered, "This isn't who you really are." The next morning, I called in sick for the first time in 2 years. I couldn't face another day of pretending everything was fine when my entire foundation had crumbled. Instead, I found myself walking through Millennium Park, trying to make sense of the chaos in my head. I ended up at the Chicago Public Library, drawn there by some instinct I couldn't name. I wandered through the self-help section, feeling embarrassed and desperate in equal measure. That's when I saw it. A book with a simple title that seemed to glow on the shelf, The Power of Self-Worth, by a psychologist named Dr. Nathaniel Branden. I almost put it back 3 times. Self-help books were for other people, people who believed they could change, people who thought they deserved better. But something made me hold onto it, made me find a quiet corner and open to the first page. Self-esteem is the reputation we acquire with ourselves, I read. It is the sum of all the judgments we make about our own worth. The words hit me like lightning. I realized I'd been giving myself terrible reviews for decades, telling myself I wasn't smart enough, bold enough, worthy enough. And then I'd been confused when the world reflected that judgment back to me. I spent the entire day in that library, reading about self-worth, about the connection between how we see ourselves and what we attract into our lives. I learned about something called the law of attraction. Not the oversimplified version I'd heard about, but the deeper principle that we draw to ourselves experiences that match our internal state. If I believed I was invisible, I would be invisible. If I believed I didn't deserve recognition, I wouldn't receive it. If I believed I was small, I would live a small life. But the flip side was equally true. If I could change how I saw myself, I could change what I experienced. Dr. Branden wrote about something called mirror work, the practice of looking yourself in the eye and speaking truth, both painful and empowering. That night, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and tried it. "David," I said to my reflection, my voice shaky and uncertain, "you are worthy of good things." The man in the mirror looked skeptical. 43 years of self-doubt don't disappear with one affirmation, but I kept going. "You have valuable ideas. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to take up space in this world." Each word felt like I was learning a foreign language, but something was happening, a tiny crack in the armor of self-criticism I'd been wearing for decades. I started doing this every morning and every night. At first, the words felt hollow, like I was lying to myself, but gradually something began to shift. The man in the mirror started looking back at me with a little more curiosity, a little less resignation. I began reading everything I could find about self-worth and manifestation, not the quick-fix stuff, but the deep work. Books by Neville Goddard about the power of assumption, Joe Dispenza about changing your internal state, Louise Hay about loving yourself unconditionally. I learned that manifestation isn't about positive thinking or vision boards. It's about becoming the person who naturally attracts what you want, and that starts with believing you deserve it. I developed what I called my worthiness practice. Every morning I would stand in front of the mirror and acknowledge one thing I appreciated about myself, not my achievements, but my inherent qualities, my kindness, my creativity, my persistence. Write down 3 things I wanted to experience that day, not from a place of desperation, but from a place of knowing I deserved good things. Throughout the day, I would catch myself when I started to shrink or apologize for existing, and consciously choose to stand a little taller, speak a little clearer. At night, I would review the day and celebrate any moment where I had honored my own worth, speaking up in a meeting, saying no to a request that didn't serve me, taking credit for my work. It was subtle at first. I started sitting up straighter in meetings. I began contributing ideas instead of just nodding along. When someone asked for my opinion, I gave it honestly instead of deflecting. But the real change was internal. I was developing what felt like a new relationship with myself, one based on respect rather than criticism, on possibility rather than limitation. About 6 weeks into this practice, I hit what felt like a wall. My old patterns came roaring back with a vengeance. I found myself apologizing for everything again, shrinking back into invisibility, convinced that this whole self-worth thing was just another delusion. The trigger was a client meeting where I'd presented an idea I was genuinely excited about. The client loved it, but my boss took credit for the concept in front of everyone. The old me would have said nothing, would have told myself it didn't matter as long as the work got done. But something had changed. I felt a flash of anger. Not rage, but clean, clear anger at being erased. And for the first time in my adult life, I spoke up. "Actually, that was David's concept," I heard myself saying. "I just helped refine the presentation." The room went quiet. My boss looked surprised, maybe even a little embarrassed. The client turned to me with new interest. "Really? David, can you tell me more about your thinking behind this?" As I explained my idea, I felt something I'd never experienced before, the sensation of taking up space without apologizing for it, of being seen and valued for my actual contributions. But that night, the old voices came back stronger than ever. "Who do you think you are? You're going to get fired. You're being arrogant. You should apologize." I stood in front of my mirror, looking at a man who seemed caught between two worlds, the invisible one he'd known for decades, and a new one where he mattered. "This is the hardest part," I told my reflection, "but you can't go back to being invisible. You've seen what's possible now." The breakthrough came 3 months later in the most unexpected way. I was having lunch alone at a small cafe near the office, something I'd started doing instead of eating at my desk like a hermit. I was reading a book about conscious creation when a woman at the next table leaned over. "Excuse me," she said with a warm smile. "I couldn't help but notice your book. Are you interested in manifestation?" Her name was Eleanor, and she was a life coach who specialized in helping people discover their authentic power. We ended up talking for 2 hours about consciousness, self-worth, and the art of creating your reality. "You know what I notice about you," she said as we were finishing our coffee. "You have this incredible light, but you keep dimming it, like you're afraid someone will tell you to turn it off." Her words hit me like a revelation. That's exactly what I'd been doing, living in constant fear that someone would tell me I was too much, too bright, too present. "What if," she continued, "instead of waiting for permission to shine, you just... John, what if you trusted that the right people, the right opportunities, the right life would be drawn to your authentic light?" That afternoon, I made a decision that changed everything. I was going to stop asking for permission to exist fully in my own life. I started small but significant changes. I rearranged my apartment to reflect my actual personality, instead of trying to be invisible, even in my own space. I hung up artwork I loved, bought plants that made me happy, created a space that felt like home for the first time in years. At work, I began sharing my ideas more freely, not aggressively, but confidently. I stopped apologizing for having opinions. I started saying no to requests that didn't align with my values or goals. The response was immediate and surprising. Instead of being annoyed by my newfound presence, people seemed to respect me more. My ideas were taken seriously. I was included in conversations I'd never been part of before. But the most profound change was in how I felt about myself. I was developing what I can only describe as an unshakable knowing that I belonged in my own life, that my thoughts mattered, my feelings were valid, my dreams were worth pursuing. 6 months after that first breakdown in the bathroom mirror, I did something that would have been unthinkable before. I asked for a promotion. Not the promotion that had gone to Jessica. She was thriving in that role, and I genuinely celebrated her success. I asked for something different, something that aligned with who I was becoming. I proposed creating a new position focused on innovative client solutions, combining my analytical skills with the creative confidence I was developing. My boss looked genuinely surprised. "David, I had no idea you were interested in taking on more leadership responsibility." "I'm interested in contributing at the level I'm capable of," I replied. my voice steady and clear. I believe I can bring significant value to the company in this role. 3 weeks later, I got the position. Today, I'm the Director of Innovation at our firm. I lead a small team of creative problem solvers, and I love what I do. But more importantly, I love who I've become. I'm not a different person. I'm the same David, but finally visible to himself. The kindness is still there, but it's no longer self-sacrificing. The thoughtfulness remains, but it's paired with confidence. The desire to help others has expanded to include helping myself. I've learned that self-worth isn't selfish. It's essential. When you believe in your own value, you show up differently in the world. You contribute more authentically. You attract experiences that match your internal state of worthiness. Last month, I met someone, a woman named Rachel who works at the art museum. She's brilliant and funny and sees me clearly in a way that used to terrify me, but now feels like coming home. When she told me she was attracted to my confidence and presence, I almost laughed. The invisible man I used to be could never have attracted someone like her. But I'm not invisible anymore. I take up space in my own life. I speak my truth. I pursue my dreams without apologizing for wanting them. What I've discovered is that the law of attraction isn't about getting what you want. It's about becoming who you need to be to naturally attract what aligns with your highest good. And that always starts with believing you're worthy of good things. For 43 years, I was trying to manifest success while believing I didn't deserve it. I was like someone trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. No matter how much I poured in, it would never hold. The hole was my lack of self-worth. Once I began to heal that, everything else became possible. I learned that you can't hide from yourself and expect the universe to find you. You can't make yourself small and expect to live a big life. You can't believe you're invisible and wonder why no one sees you. But the moment you start treating yourself like you matter, the world begins to reflect that back to you. Not because you're demanding it, but because you're finally aligned with your own truth. The changes in my life have created ripples I never expected. My relationship with my sister Sarah has deepened because I'm no longer pretending to be someone I'm not. My work has more impact because I'm contributing from a place of authentic confidence rather than fearful people-pleasing. I've started mentoring younger colleagues, helping them avoid the decades of self-doubt I experienced. I share what I've learned about worthiness and presence, about the difference between being humble and being invisible. Last week, a young man named Alex came to me after a team meeting. "How do you do it?" he asked. "How do you speak up so confidently? I have ideas, but I'm always afraid they're not good enough." I looked at him and saw myself at 25, brilliant, capable, but convinced he didn't deserve to be heard. "Start with believing you belong in the conversation," I told him. "Not because you're perfect, but because your perspective has value. The world needs what you have to offer, but first, you have to believe that's true." I watched his face change as those words landed. It was like watching someone remember something they'd forgotten about themselves. I still do my mirror work every morning, though it looks different now. Instead of trying to convince myself I'm worthy, I acknowledge the worthiness that was always there. Instead of building confidence from scratch, I'm maintaining the relationship with myself that I've cultivated. "Good morning, David," I say to my reflection. "What wants to be created through you today?" It's not about positive thinking or affirmations that feel false. It's about staying connected to the truth of who I am, a valuable human being with unique gifts to offer the world. I've learned that manifestation is an inside job. You can't attract from the outside what you don't believe you deserve on the inside. But when you align with your own worthiness, when you stop apologizing for existing, when you take up the space you're meant to occupy, that's when magic happens. Not the flashy, dramatic kind of magic. The quiet, profound kind that transforms your entire experience of being alive. If you're listening to this and recognizing yourself in the invisible man I used to be, I want you to know something. You don't have to live small. You don't have to apologize for having needs, dreams, and desires. You don't have to earn your worthiness. It's your birthright. Start with the mirror. Look yourself in the eye and tell yourself one true thing about your value. Not your achievements, not your potential, your inherent worth as a human being. Notice where you make yourself small, in meetings, in relationships, in your own thoughts. Practice taking up a little more space, speaking a little more clearly, believing a little more deeply that you belong. The world doesn't need another invisible person. It needs you, fully present, authentically confident, unapologetically yourself. Your worthiness isn't something you have to prove. It's something you have to remember. 3 years ago, I was a ghost in my own life. I moved through the world like I was apologizing for existing, like I was taking up space that belonged to someone more deserving. Today I know that I am exactly as deserving as anyone else, not more, not less, exactly equal in my fundamental worth as a human being. This knowing has changed everything, not because it made me arrogant or demanding, but because it made me real. It allowed me to show up authentically in my own life, to contribute from my true self rather than from fear. The man in the mirror isn't perfect. He still has moments of doubt, still catches himself shrinking sometimes, but he's real now. He's present, he matters, and he knows it, and that makes all the difference. Your life is waiting for you to show up fully in it. Your dreams are waiting for you to believe you deserve them. Your authentic self is waiting for you to stop hiding and start shining. The mirror is ready when you are. If this story resonated with you, if you recognized yourself in the invisible man I used to be, I want to hear from you. Comment below with the words, "I am worthy," and tell me one way you're going to take up more space in your own life this week. Your worthiness isn't up for debate. It's time to start living like you believe it. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, someone who's been making themselves small, please share this with them. Sometimes we need permission to believe in our own worth, and you might be the person who gives them that gift. Hit that like button if you believe that everyone deserves to live fully in their own life, and subscribe for more stories about discovering your authentic power. Your presence here matters. You matter. The universe is waiting for you to remember who you really are.